So I know that it's been a really, really long day, and we're saving the best for last. So we have a really, really special guest. To me personally, me and a couple of my classmates actually saw her in the binocular vision clinic here, and she's a motivational speaker. She has a very amazing and inspirational story to tell. We actually passed out some of her handouts and her business cards. So if you guys have any comments or any questions for her afterwards, please email her. She's going to be at the wine and cheese reception afterward too. So come find her if you want to ask her about anything really. She's great. And without further ado, please welcome Ms. Gina Bartiromo.
Hello. All right. So my name is Gina Bartiromo, like Annie said, and I'm a brain injury survivor. And I'm here to share the incident that led to my double vision and my vision therapy experience. So I am absolutely delighted to be here, even though I'm nervous. I'm very, very excited for the opportunity. It's really an honor to be here. I want to thank Annie Lee, first and foremost, for making this happen. She worked really hard to give me this opportunity to share my story with you. So thank you, Annie. So, I'm especially excited to be sharing my vision therapy story with you because I know that you're going to be going out into the world spreading the benefits of vision therapy, and that brings me a lot of joy. So before I tell you more, like I said, it's a pretty big story, and I'll just start by sharing a little bit more about me outside of the story. So I'm from Southern California, and I've lived in several areas in the Bay Area for a number of years, and now I'm living in Walnut Creek. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in holistic health. I teach yoga at the YMCA in Pleasant Hill. I'm an intuitive, and I also share with people, teach people how to tap into their own intuition, because every single one of us is intuitive, and it's pretty amazing to learn more about that. So it's one of my favorite things to do. I'm a certified coactive life coach, and as a thank you for this opportunity, I would like to offer everyone in the audience a complimentary coaching session as a sample to see if coaching could be of benefit to you. I also teach skills for grounding and centering yourself in kind of a way of meditation using imagery. And the other day when I was preparing my speech, I wanted to give you an added gift because I know you're all students, and I think it's really important to take some time to unwind and de-stress. So I made you 2 MP3 audios. One's a 10-minute relaxation audio, and the other one is a 20-minute grounding and centering in MP3 format. So I'd love to share them with you. And so on your handout, my email is at the bottom, and it's also at the top. So if you contact me, I'll personally send that to you within 48 hours of you sending me an email. So thank you for letting me come and share my story. So also I wrote an article for the Brain Injury Center when I was going there as, they have a support group for people that have brain injury, and I wrote an article about my story, which is the one I believe Annie read on my website, and I have it in PDF format. If you want the story, I can email that to you as well. I'm happy to do that. All right, so lastly, I was on the Weather Channel, interviewed on the Weather Channel for a program they call So You Think You'd Survive, and the next season is, is coming out this fall. It's their second season, and I'm going to be on one of the episodes, for that, they interviewed a whole bunch of people that survived some sort of weather event. So it's going to be in the fall, and I just found out this morning it's November 5th, and it's not until 10 o'clock at night on a Thursday. So I'm going to hopefully be getting a clip of the interview, and I'll post it on my website and on Facebook, on my business Facebook page, so if you're interested at all. All right. So like I said, this is a big story, and I still have feelings around it. I've practiced sharing this several times, so I'm pretty confident that tears aren't going to start coming, but I might get choked up, and I need my notes. It's a pretty big story, so I want to make sure and share the highlights with you, even though I have the time to share with you a big chunk of what the story is. I just want to make sure that I'm keeping in line, because I can often go off topic and to something that I think is a really wonderful experience from my story, and I want to make sure and stay on topic. So forgive me while I look down to find out where I'm going next. And that's also why I'm planning to write a book, and I'm hoping that that book will come out sometime next year. Okay, here we go. So I plan on telling my story, and then afterwards sharing my vision therapy experience with them. So the truth of the matter is, it's a miracle that I'm standing here. It's one miracle after another that got me to be standing here today, and I'm forever grateful. The tears come already. All right, so on June 6th, 2009, I fell about 200 feet down the side of Yosemite's Half Dome. And I was hiking up, not rock climbing, because you can rock climb on the other side, but I was hiking up, and there's an image there. And I'll show you, I don't know if you can see it, but that's Half Dome. And this is the climbing side, the hiking side, and that's the rock climbing side, so I was on the hiking side. So, I don't remember the fall, and 2 weeks following the fall. So when I came to in the hospital, and I heard my mom tell me in really simple, straightforward, direct terms that I was in the hospital seriously injured from a fall that I had taken while hiking, I wasn't at all able to understand the complexity of what she was saying to me. But I could tell from her tears and from just the energy in the room that I was very lucky to be alive. And I remember feeling immediate gratitude. And then I passed out again. Then I was back in La La Land right after that. But ever since that point, I've just been oozing gratitude. So people hear my story and they're horrified. And it's understandable. But for me, it's been a beautiful, life-changing experience. And I'm so grateful for the numerous miracles and the magic that has come from experiencing this, from all of it. And to be the recipient of such profound bravery and dedication on that day is a humbling experience. It used to be more intense, but even now, when I share the story, if I even just share it like a sentence, or a little bit more than a sentence, I hear the words coming out of my mouth, and it's hard for me to realize that it actually happened. Partly because I was unconscious for 2 weeks, and partly because it's so huge, I have to check in and think, am I lying? Is this true? Did this really happen to me? It's getting much better. It used to be a bigger dissonance. So here's a combination of what I recall and what I pieced together from the various people who were part of this. I went camping with 3 of my friends, Trisha, Peter, and Vanessa. We decided last minute that the weather was good, so we'd hike up Half Dome. Those of you who know about Half Dome, it's about a 5.5-hour, 6-hour hike up, 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 up. It's basically a very intense Stairmaster for 6 hours. Then you reach the subdome right before you go up to the peak, and the round trip going up to the peak is about 30 minutes. When I got to the subdome with my friends, I looked at Half Dome. I didn't know what Half Dome was before this, and I hadn't really known much of anything except that you needed to be off by 3 p.m. My friends had done a little bit more research, but I was just following along, and I looked at the intense steepness of it, and I was like, oh, wow, am I really going to do this? Wow. So we had a snack and water, took a little bit of a break, and went for it. So Tricia chose not to go up to the peak with us, and so she stayed at the subdome with our backpacks. We started our descent, and Peter went up and to the peak and back down a little bit quicker than we did because he wanted to come back to be with Tricia, who's his wife. And Vanessa and I made ourselves up to the top, and we were expecting a beautiful view, but the clouds were so intense that we couldn't see anything. So we decided to just get ourselves back down. On our descent down, it began to drizzle, and that turned into a flurry of snow. And again, it was June, so it wasn't expected. And the rock already is pretty slippery without any rain or snow. And I'm an avid hiker, but this is where it became very dangerous. I was having great difficulty getting down from the peak, and disaster hit at a place where one of the support poles that was holding the trail cable in place was uprooted. So you can see it might be hard to see, but there are holes that are holding up a cable and a 2x4 where you can have some solid footing that was horizontal. So the pole being uprooted from the rock made the cable all floppy, and the 2x4 was not available for a foothold. With my grip and my footing affected, my stability was completely compromised. And also I was holding my weight up on the cable, which was floppy, so my biceps began to give out after some time. And I was only wearing, you're supposed to wear gloves in order to have more stability, and I was wearing gloves, but they were the weightlifting gloves where your fingers are exposed, and my hands were getting really cold. Vanessa was absolutely amazing at coaching me through as we inched ourselves slowly down, trying to find stability points. And she was doing a great job trying to find stability for me. Peter called up to us that they might actually start to hike down because they were cold and because Tricia was experiencing asthma. But we couldn't see them because the clouds were so intense. So Vanessa was calling back to him and letting him know that we were having trouble. Then I hollered down in a very direct and stern voice that I was struggling and that I needed him to stick around. I was thinking in my head, this is hard. How am I going to get down from here? What do I do next? What am I going to do? But I wasn't at that moment in a panic state that I'm aware of. I just wanted to portray that the situation was serious and I might need some help. Peter decided to come back up to help, and Tricia spoke to a random stranger explaining that her friend was having trouble up there and asked if he could go up to help. His name was Rick, and Rick started on his way up and was helping other people who were also struggling. And he says that I was already falling down before he reached me, and I was airborne the very first time he ever saw me. I guess I fell where that pole was uprooted from the rock, making the cable slack and dismantling the 2x4, which left no footing and no stability at the cable. But I don't have any recollection of this. I'm told that my rear end slammed down first, and that I began to slide and plunge down the mountain. I was completely out of Vanessa's reach. I was completely out of most everyone's reach. They estimate that I was going about 30 to 40 miles per hour as I was flying, slam, flying, slam. So no one could have stopped me. And all poor Vanessa could do was to watch. I mean, what a horrid event to have to watch. And so She said she finally at one point had to turn away because she didn't want to watch her friend fall to her death. Apparently I was screaming as I descended and continuously ricocheting off the side of the mountain. And poor Peter also witnessed a big portion of my fall, and he says I smacked my back up against one of the poles. I did a couple of cartwheels, and I tumbled down the rock before I was stopped by a tiny crevice of rock about 6 to 8 inches, and he thought I broke my neck. So going 30 or 40 miles per hour, I don't know how a crevice of 6 to 8 inches stopped me from falling. So that's one of the many miracles. And as I was hiking up, randomly, Vanessa took a picture of me as I was hiking up, and just happens to be that the crevice of rock that stopped me from dying was just to my left. So you can see it's just there. And my heart aches knowing that Vanessa and Peter and Rick and anyone else that was there had to witness such an event. In my opinion, it was far worse for them. I was unconscious and they had to witness what they thought was the death of their friend. Horrifying. Once I landed up against that crevice of rock, Rick perched himself as close as he could to me and began caring for me. I was broken and battered, and I laid face down and was bleeding profusely. They just didn't know where I was bleeding from. They didn't want to move me, obviously. Trisha had to borrow someone's cell phone in order to get reception at the subdome to call 911, and she was reporting my fall, and that they thought that one of those moments that, oh my God, am I telling the truth? So, Anessa was up where I had started my fall, and she had to get herself down safely. But after seeing this horrid event, she was pretty shook up, obviously. Somehow, despite the slippery rock and the flaccid cable, she found the strength to safely get herself to where I was. When Vanessa got where I was, Rick and his nephew-in-law, Kylie, who just happened to be an EMT, another miracle, were already at the crevice taking my vitals and conveying the information over to Trisha. Because Peter and Vanessa were so distraught after all that, it was decided that Rick and Kylie would stay with me, and they would go down to the subdome to safety. So Rick and Kylie stayed with me for 3 hours in the cold as I lay there bleeding and broken. Many people donated their jackets in order to help keep me warm. Kylie says that I came to 3 times, and they had to quiet me down to keep me from moving too much. And at one point when I came to, I shifted from being face down to flipping onto my back. And that's when they knew that I wasn't paralyzed and that I hadn't stopped my neck. They steadied me so that I didn't continue to shuttle down the mountain, because 3 or 4 feet away was a 1,000-foot drop, and I would be gone. So Yosemite had sent a rescue helicopter, but the helicopter was having difficulty getting to me due to the weather and the clouds. There was another team coming up from the valley to take me down in a gurney, just in case the helicopter wasn't able to airlift me off. After 3 tries, finally, in perfect timing, there was a clearing in the sky. It was the helicopter's last attempt. It was getting dark, the weather was poor, and they were running low on fuel to add to everything. So this was their very last try, and the clouds, the rescuer told me that the clouds, last try, just opened up, which is a huge miracle. They hovered at a challenging angle against this steep mountain to let out the rescue team. Had the helicopter not been able to pick me up, I would have been transported the 5+ hours down that huge, steep, rocky mountain via a stretcher basket. And I had already broken my spine, my skull, my rib, my sacrum, and my jaw, and a couple other things. So that would have ruined me. Apparently, I'm told after the fact that my skull fracture was just a hairline away from permanent irreversible damage and that I would have needed brain surgery. But the team was able to get me off the precarious rock, which happened to be a slab of rock that saved my life. They put me into a stretcher basket and hooked me up to the helicopter cable. Jack Holfitch, a Yosemite EMT, rode with me hanging on the side of the cord that was hanging 100 feet below the helicopter and took us to a meadow where I was transferred into a medevac helicopter. Apparently, normally, they're only allowed to go about 200 feet below the helicopter and a maximum of 150 feet below the helicopter because the gurney or whoever's hanging on would go into spinning otherwise. And the talent of the pilot and the spotter who was letting him know what was going on, what he couldn't see, were able to bring it up to 100 feet without us going spinning. It's just phenomenal that the pilot was able to even maneuver the helicopter in that angle with us in tow. It's amazing to me that these are rescuers that do this day in and day out. And maybe not huge rescues like this, but this is part of their normal 8 to 5 or 10-hour shift. So afterward, everyone at the subdome that was huddled together to keep warm for 3 hours while I was waiting for rescue, Trisha, Peter, Vanessa, Rick, Kylie, and their family, and the rest who had stayed, had to then hike 5 to 6 hours back down in the dark. When they did get back, they gave their report of the incident to the search and rescue team individually, and Trisha miraculously had my parents' contact information in an old address book from grad school that she happened to have camping. It's absolutely unbelievable. So she was advised not to contact my parents herself and to leave that to the medical professionals. Being switched from helicopter A to B and then to the hospital, somehow my identity and information weren't available when I got to the emergency room. I was treated, stabilized, and put into the neurocritical care unit as a Jane Doe. I was Jane Doe all night long. And just a side note, back at the camp, they had run in with a hungry bear who clawed at the backpack that was sitting on the bench while they were sleeping. In the middle of the night, it wasn't enough that they had to deal with their friend in critical care that had just fallen 200 feet down a mountain. Now they had to contend with a bear at the campground. So Trisha called first thing in the morning to see how I was, and the confusion was finally cleared. And at that point, my parents still hadn't been contacted. The medical staff told my friends again not to contact them, that they would do it. An important piece here is that my fall was on June 6th. My parents were contacted on June 7th. June 7th is the anniversary of my brother's death 4 years previous. So they received this phone call the morning of the 4-year anniversary of their brother's death, of my brother's death, their son's death. I just can't even imagine. So my injuries included a skull fracture where the spinal cord enters the brain, hematomas, swelling, and bleeding of the brain, fourth nerve palsy of the left eye, bleeding from my left ear and temporary hearing loss, lacerations requiring stitches behind the left ear and on the top of my head. 3 lower teeth were uprooted. I had jaw fractures requiring a titanium plate, a broken collarbone, fractured rib, and 3 compression fractures of my spine at T12, L1, and L2. I had a fractured sacrum, a large hematoma on my left glute, and the tailbone was jarred off center, and a laceration on my right shin, and numerous bruises. I was in the hospital for a total of 1 month and 1 day in 3 different hospitals. First, they flew me to the closest one, which was Modesto's Doctors Medical Center. And then I was shifted to Sacramento once I was stabilized. I don't remember either of those. I was unconscious during both of those experiences, or semi-conscious. And finally, I was taken to Kaiser's Rehabilitation Hospital in Vallejo. I was semi-conscious for 2 weeks, which I have, like I said, no memory of. My brother said it was like Groundhog's Day, because I would be completely passed out, and I would wake up during that 2 weeks and be in fight or flight. I wouldn't know where I was, and I wouldn't be able to communicate because I had a broken jaw. And, he said they had to just tell me over and over, "You're safe, you're in a hospital," and I would pass out again, and then I would wake up again freaking out, not knowing where I was. When I came to, I had amnesia. I couldn't remember where I lived, where I worked, or what I had done for college or work or anything. So gratefully, I remembered the loved ones that were there in front of me and friends that came to visit. I couldn't remember a thing from the camping experience or from the hike or from the fall. My history slowly came back to me when my family and friends started to share facts about my past. It took maybe, I don't know, a week, but little things would start to come back, and then over time, more and more came back. I'm just so grateful that it all came back. And there are 2 weeks of my life that I don't remember, and it's the weirdest thing to have other people tell you how you behaved and what you said and what you did when I'm not able to remember any of it. It's very strange, especially because I was acting different than my normal self. So for a long while, I was perpetually in the present moment with blinders on for anything but the now, which in hindsight was my saving grace. There was no forward thinking, only the now, the present moment. There are meditators in the world who are seeking that joy. So I'm really very fortunate. Many accident survivors suffer from depression because they're fully aware of what's happening now and how it used to be, and they can't hold on to those two very disparate things. I didn't really understand things. My brain was in a younger place. But I'm so grateful that my brain went to that safe place and that I had amnesia and some memory issues, because in my opinion, it was way better than the depression that could have come. I was looking through some hospital notes at a time, I don't know, maybe a few years after, and I was 12 days into my hospital stay. It said on the piece of paper, "Chief complaint, I fell." I was in a much simpler place. My brother Paul and his friends got me coloring books as part of my therapy, because they didn't know what to expect. I was in a wheelchair in the hospital, and I went to physical therapy 3 times a day because I'd broken my spine in 3 places, to reteach my left leg to cooperate with walking again. In speech therapy, I couldn't remember words like squirrel and broom. I remember I knew that I knew them because they looked familiar, but I couldn't call up the word. And I remember toward the end of my stay, I was at speech therapy, and they asked me if I remembered how to look something up on Google. They put me in front of a computer and put Google up, and I was completely lost, completely confused, and I didn't remember how to type. I couldn't type, and I know I used to type, so when I was sitting there, I thought there was a bit of dissonance, like something's not right. I feel like I used to be able to do this, so I now remember how to type. I couldn't laugh or cry or cough or sneeze because of the extreme pain. My body just wouldn't do any of those things. It was protecting me, and I believe it was partly because I was still in shock and that my mind wasn't all there, and partly due to the intense pain. Once I was released from the hospital, I was in no condition to return to living alone. I was living in the Richmond, El Cerrito area, So my parents took me to their home in Southern California. It took a few days for me to acclimate to being in the new surroundings. Though I wasn't in a wheelchair, thankfully I wasn't sent home with a wheelchair, needing a wheelchair, I was still adjusting to walking with the help of a cane. I was wearing a back brace for my spine. If you've seen the movie Frida, it's similar to that, except that it was more advanced back brace, and it was much more today's day and age. I ended up wearing the back brace for 3.5 months. I needed help into and out of bed, sitting and standing and showering. Someone had to be there for all of that. And I remained on a liquid diet for a total of 9 weeks due to the jaw fractures, which was causing me to wake up every 2 hours to use the restroom. So my family had to take shifts in order to have someone come to help me in and out of bed all night long. So I was basically like a newborn baby. I was struggling with double vision, brain injury issues, pain, and sleep issues. I was losing lots of my hair as my body was detoxing all the medicine I was on, and because of the stress that I had been through. After one of the MRIs of my brain and my spine, I suddenly got horrible vertigo, where the world was just spinning every time I sat up or sat down, every time I laid down or got up from laying down. And I didn't have dreams for like 3 months, but when I did start having dreams, I had dreams of injured bodies. And over time, they became more pleasant dreams about my travels and my friends and stuff. I remember my brother helping me do speech therapy when I was at home, and they would send me home with homework, and he made me laugh at one point. I had taken a sip of water, and my throat wasn't functioning quite normally, so I couldn't swallow very effectively, and so I was holding water in my mouth. He made me laugh, and I spewed water all over the place. And that happened quite often. I actually learned that I couldn't drink water while I was being driven somewhere, because it would just happen more regularly, and sometimes it still happens. And when my traumatized, injured brain would momentarily gain consciousness in that first 2 weeks of my hospitalization, I'm told that I was trying to communicate with my broken jaw, and later with choppy words, that my brother Anthony, who passed away in 2005, was with me on that day on the mountain. Though I don't remember it, I wholeheartedly believe that he was there. I also truly believe that a friend, Cam, treasured friend Cam from England, who I met in New Zealand, who passed away in 2007, was also with me on that mountain. There are so many people that I don't have time to mention here, but the web of human connection that gelled together in such a miraculous way leaves me in absolute awe. So many people were affected. It wasn't just me that was affected that day. So many people took part in the event, and it was life-altering for many. I am graciously indebted to each and every one of my heroes, and I have a deep respect for the fellow humans that were affected by the depth of the experience. And I witnessed countless miracles since my fall as well. I was traveling for 2 years not long before the fall, and I didn't have health insurance. So just months before the fall, I had gotten a job which gave me health insurance, and that gratefully covered the full extent of my rescue, hospitalization, and rehabilitation. Otherwise, I'd be in a black hole of debt. I was taken to what I'm told is the best rehabilitation hospital in the state, Kaiser Vallejo, where I received superior medical attention, physical, occupational, and speech therapy. They don't yet have vision therapy. I'd love to see it there someday. Despite challenges, my body has been recovering outstandingly. I quickly learned to walk again with the help of the team at Kaiser Vallejo. I have my limbs, my fingers, and my toes. You can't see any of the injuries that I had, so there are minimal scars on my body that are seen. And though I had hematomas and bleeding on the brain and mild traumatic brain injury causing amnesia, aphasia, and still, with all of that, my brain has recovered extraordinarily well. I had an MRI a few years after that showed no scarring or residual injury of the brain. I still struggle with sleep issues, sometimes basic word searching, but it's so much easier than it was. I still have back and neck issues. I still have tingling on the left side of my face, throat and neck, my left glute, my left calf and foot 24/7. Kind of feels like I'm coming off of Novocaine from being at the dentist. That's kind of what it feels like. And I don't have complete taste buds, or they're not fully available taste buds on the left side of my face, left side of my mouth. So my jaw slowly realigned, so chewing was back to normal. For a long while, I had to chew on the left side, but I couldn't taste on the left side, so then I'd have to bring the food over to the right side to have some flavor. So luckily, things have settled and it's not that intense anymore. I no longer have vertigo, which was horrible, like I said, for about 3 months. I've regained my balance and coordination, though I still need to be very attentive because occasionally my gait can be off and I might misstep or stress my ankle, especially when I'm going downstairs or downhill. My body kind of doesn't send the message from my brain to my feet all the time. And sometimes there's a reverberation that occurs in my left ear when I'm in a populated place, like at the grocery store. And I'm still working through double vision, which I'm about to talk about in just a minute. I received amazing amounts of generosity from both my family, my mom, my dad, and my brothers, and dear friends, a spiritual counselor, my teachers, the makers of the ultrasound machine, which was helping with my fracture of my collarbone, the Traumatic Brain Injury Association, my vision therapists at Agape Optometry and at UC Berkeley, and many others. And Rick and his wife and Kylie and the whole family are now dear friends of mine. I'm just so grateful that they're in my life. The entire experience has been truly like a rebirth. The infancy of being broken and battered, hospitalized, and so dependent on others. The toddler years of being in a back brace and still needing help with showering and eating and getting in and out of bed. The youth of getting out of the back brace. And using a cane, to being a teen as my family drove me to all of my medical appointments. And then I began to relearn to drive. Yes, I had to relearn to drive, and my baby brother was the one that taught me. But at first I was avoiding night driving because of my vision, and eventually driving at night, to later then being able to drive in the rain. So it has gotten much better. To then moving back up to Northern California, that was like graduating from high school and going to freshman year in college. Looking out, wondering, where's my place in the world? And the time right now is like I've just completed grad school and I'm starting to create the future that I've envisioned for myself. So now, vision therapy. So I have to start this segment of the talk by saying, please excuse my layman's terms. Initially, there were too many injuries for the medical professionals to be concerned about my vision. So I was just given a patch, and I would change the patch from eye to eye. Thankfully, I never got a headache or nausea, despite the brain trauma, the double vision, and the vertigo. A couple months after my fall, I had an appointment with an ophthalmologist, and she diagnosed me with vertical diplopia. This was really hard for me to take in. She said that it was permanent and that glasses were the only option and they weren't going to completely fix it. She said that surgery was available, but again, that wasn't going to completely fix it. And she referred me to an optometrist for glasses. This was absolutely mortifying to me. I was really depressed about it, and I didn't want to take her diagnosis as truth. It was the first time that someone had told me that there was permanent damage. And you have to remember, I was in a moment-by-moment, state of being for weeks, and since I had regained consciousness. it was around this time that I started to realize that my life was different than it was before. I'd never had vision problems before. I'd never worn glasses before. And now suddenly I had a permanent trauma that was going to affect the rest of my life. My spine was expected to heal, my fractures were healing, my strength was coming back, and nothing affected me more than this vision challenge because it was long-term. And I was under the impression this intense event and my injuries would be mostly behind me. Of course, there might be some residual, maybe TMJ, or needing some sort of tooth realignment or something that I wasn't even aware of at that time, maybe. But lifelong and permanent was really, really hard to cope with. So loved ones obviously had been through a huge trauma as well, and they would say lovingly things like, Gina, you're lucky to be alive, you're lucky to be walking, you're lucky to be talking. Wearing glasses for the rest of your life is not that big of a deal. It's nothing to be depressed about. And although I know and I knew that this was true, I was distraught. Luckily, it didn't last too long. I then went to see the optometrist for glasses, and after her exam, she said there was a chance that my eyes could improve after the trauma calmed, and I felt relief. But I still couldn't really sit well with the lifelong diagnosis I was given. So at that appointment, I was given I think it's called a diopter. I was given a 6-diopter Fresnel prism, and we bought an inexpensive pair of drugstore glasses and put the Fresnel prism there on the left lens. My colleague and friend, Tara Kim, was studying marriage and family therapy, and she had just learned about brain trauma and about vision therapy, and was telling me a little bit about vision therapy and how it can be helpful to those that have challenges after a brain injury. So I called Kaiser, but Kaiser didn't offer vision therapy, and they said that I needed probably a special approval if I was to go outside of Kaiser. I did go to one eye doctor in Southern California that offered me some exercises to do with my eyes, but it was pretty minimal and limited. And my physical therapist also gave me some vision exercises. She just had my eyes going in all directions and then in circles both directions on a daily basis, several times a day if I could remember. And I really do feel that that set the stage for improvement. My friend Tara Kim researched local doctors in my area where my parents were that offered vision therapy, and she encouraged me to write a letter to let them know what was going on. So I wrote to 2 doctors, one I never heard back from, and one called within a few days and invited me in for a complimentary consult. That was Dr. James Mayer at Agape Optometry in Thousand Oaks, and I am forever grateful to Agape Optometry and to Dr. Mayer. So in the initial appointment, they evaluated my eyes. My eyes were seeing double vertically, which they said was not easily worked with because I guess it's more common for horizontal double vision to be helped. It was determined, though, in the exam that my eyes had the ability to move vertically into proper alignment. And so they sent me home with hope. They said that there is hope if you continue to do vision therapy. You might be able to have everything align. And they invited me to continue coming back to see them for vision therapy. Extremely lovely office, very, very generous, big-hearted people. In April of 2010, I was sent home from Dr. Mayer's office with my first vision therapy exercises. Within 2 weeks, my vision had improved, and I dropped from a 6 diopter prism down to a 5 within 2 weeks. And it took maybe a month, but then I dropped down to a 4 prism. And the changes just kept improving as time continued. I went and saw them weekly. My vision therapists, Greg and Kenny, were phenomenal people. So by the end of the 2-year time with Agape, I was not wearing glasses for the most of the day because I was able to move my eyes into single vision. Mid or late day when I got tired, I'd pop on the 2 prism lenses. And along the way, I accumulated several ground-in prism lenses, a 2, 3, and 4 diopter, but I was generally wearing the 2 prism, if any, at all. So after about 3.5 years of rehabilitating from my hiking fall, along with the help of amazing friends and family and some amazing, beautiful synchronicity, my dedicated amount of physical rehabilitation and effort finally paid off, and I made it back to Northern California. With the help of a service called the Department of Rehabilitation, a state agency that helps people get back into the working world, I juggled a very, very part-time job while attending life coach certification program. It was very hard for me to leave the support system that I got at Agape Optometry. I was there weekly for quite a long time. And then it started to go bi-weekly, and it soon started, close to when I left, it was fading off as my eyes improved, and I could maintain the vision therapy at home that I was familiar with. When I moved back to the East Bay, they sent me off with various exercises for whatever challenge my eyes might be going through. It was, and still is, pretty challenging to balance real life with rehabilitation, with physical therapy, and with vision therapy. I still struggle with neck and back issues, sleep issues, anxiety, and some mild memory challenges. The care it takes to focus on those things makes it harder to work full-time. Essentially, I'm still rehabilitating, and I'm 6 years out, even though now it's probably more called maintenance, but it requires a lot of attention. I continue to do vision therapy often, but rehabilitation has been my primary focus now that life is back. As for my experience with vision therapy, it's hard work, and it takes a lot of dedication, and gratefully I'm a very dedicated person, otherwise I would have given up a long time ago. Unfortunately, since moving back into the Bay Area, working part-time and managing with real life, I've gone up in prism strength. I now start off the day with no glasses, and I switch to a 2 prism early in the morning, maybe mid-morning, and then to a 3 prism, and by the end of the day, I'm in a 4. Some days I start off with a 4 because I'm tired and stressed. Today I started off with 4. Of all the challenges I seem to have worked through, I'm still distraught over my double vision. Of course, I'm very grateful for as far as I have come. Still, living life with 3 pairs of glasses and 3 pairs of sunglasses is frustrating, and always having to do something to make vision single. It's a lot of work. It's constant, day in, day out, even with glasses, and right now you're double. So I have to work to make you single, and I'm persistent. I do try every single time I see double, I shift it into single, but it's a lot of work. So I still do 10 to 20 minutes of vision therapy 2 to 5 times per week, and lately it's been closer to the 5 times per week, but it's wearisome, and my dedication is flailing after 5 years. Part of me just wants to give up, and that driven part of me, that committed part of me, continues to keep going. Sometimes I get a bit of inspiration, like going to UC Berkeley for some tips. So I got some tips from recently, for example, from Dr. Mark Wu and from Dr. Jen Lim with suggestions to hold the fusion a little bit longer. That hopefully will push me beyond the current struggle that I'm in. And along the way, there have been a handful of random times when for a few moments I can see perfectly clear vision without any lenses. And it's a felt sensation behind my left eye that I can't explain. It just feels like it snaps into alignment and I just see clearly. There is a felt sensation, but there's no effort. It's clear, perfect vision without any effort. And like I said, it's happened maybe a handful of times in the last 6 years, and that gives me hope. That tells me my eye can do it, so I keep trying. So here are some things in vision therapy that significantly impacted my progression. Weekly appointments for accountability and interaction was absolutely vital. seeing the stats, so seeing the numbers and the graduated steps really helped my left brain to see that I was progressing in all the appointments that I went to. Getting encouragement by Greg and Kenny, who were amazing supporters and cheerleaders throughout the entire experience. A good variety of exercises to keep me from being bored. Recently, I got the HTS Home Therapy Vision Therapy computer program from UC Berkeley, and that locks me into 20 minutes of sitting down and doing the exercises. It's engaging and it gives me instant feedback. I'm bored as anything while I'm doing it, but while I'm doing it, what I'm doing lately is maybe an audio podcast or affirmations in the background so that I can keep my brain busy while my eyes are doing their homework. Although the computer program is more engaging, my eyes do better with the handheld exercises, and I notice a difference between the two. But when I do the handheld exercises, I get easily distracted. The phone could ring, or I can have my to-do list in my head. Oh, I should go put that in the oven, or I should, whatever it is that calls me away, especially if my eyes aren't behaving well. If my eyes aren't behaving well and they're not doing something that I know I did yesterday or I know I did last week, I get frustrated and I just feel like giving up. So I keep trying, and then the phone rings and I'm done for the day. I wish the computer program was as beneficial because it really locks me in. Or weekly visits so that I can continue to get that reassurance. So my strong desire to continue not wearing glasses is what keeps me going. So we've got a few more minutes left. I want to play the entire video, and some of it you may not understand, but it's only about 6 minutes, maybe 8.
Thank you for listening.